All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've taken a few months off, had a few things pop up rather unexpectedly, but today is my first day back, and I've got to remember how to fly an aircraft. Gonna get a crash course today, I believe. Still flying the DAR, TBM 930. And to be honest, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's Dare, I don't know. So I'm probably going to mutilate it and call it all kinds of wrong things, but there it is. We're in it, and we're going to fly it. And hopefully we get from Monrovia, Liberia. We're departing from Roberts International. Departing on runway 22 on a straight out departure, and looks like we've got about a 11 knot wind getting out of here. We'll probably be directed to the west for most of flight, west, southwest. We've got a total of 981 nautical miles. It's about a 2 hour and 36 minutes flight. We're carrying almost a full load of fuel because I always seem to run out, and want to make sure it doesn't happen today. Our destination airport is Murtala Muhammed International Airport in Lagos, Nigeria. Pretty big airport from the satellite topography and everything. 2 runways. We're flying into runway 18 right, and we're arriving on the Thai 1N arrival. We've got a 6 knot tailwind. This airport, for some reason, does not have instrument landing systems on the opposite end of runways, which is 3-6 right and left. And on my first flight back after taking about 4 months off from flying a flight sim, I didn't feel like I was up for the challenge of that. However, I do face a completely new challenge with flying, or actually landing with a tailwind is actually a dangerous thing to do, so hopefully I don't plant us into the dirt today. It's not a bad tailwind. It's only 6 knots is what's showing on weather right now, and that could die out completely by the time we get there. A lot of things can change in 2 hours and 36 minutes, so hopefully that danger aspect and element is definitely one of them. Don't know until we get there, but we'll play it by ear until we do. So I'm going to go ahead and prep everything for pre-flight, and we should be off the ground here in about maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Turning all of our heats on, airframe de-ice, light de-ice, which is that's our beacon, our propeller de-ice, windshield de-ice, our pitot, and our stall horn warning. The system says we don't need our initial separator on. However, I'm going to leave it on because it is nasty outside. We've got well, you can see right there, it's off in the distance, but we've got cloud cover from all the way here off to Lagos, so should be interesting. I'm not sure how much the ground will actually get to see, but we will definitely play it by ear. I missed the call outs from the tower earlier. Let me just go see if they gave me a altitude to shoot for upon departure. Alright, we are shooting for flight level 110, so I'm going to go ahead and dial that in. 11,000. And one thing I did not check was the actual flight profile today, and I'm not sure what altitude I'll be sent to. The flight sim has an interesting way of sending me to say, hey, level out at 32,000, which is fine, but that's max altitude for the aircraft. And sometimes they'll say, hey, level out at 34, flight level 340, which is too high, and we get all kinds of cabin pressure warnings. So hopefully that doesn't happen today. If it does, we'll just make changes accordingly and take it on the chin. Turning on my speed bugs. Let's get all those on. So I want to know what my altitude is going to be. Set that for barometric 500 feet. And I use that as my decision altitude. So if I'm at 500 feet, that's where I'll decide land or no land. And we'll make a decision to go around and try again at that point. That's not it. Flight plan. That's what I want there. And while that is loading in, let's see what weather looks like out there. Not too bad on a radar at the moment. Leave that at 100 miles, or a little bit under that. Alright, everything looks good right there. Barometer is set for local pressure. Flaps are down to the first notch. Strobe lights are on, nav lights are on. We'll leave those on until we're in the air. Make sure those are on my panel. We have nav and strobe are on my panel. Taxi and landing are off. And taxi is now off. Okay. Those are good to go. All other switches are set in their primary operating configuration. So let's turn the parking brake off. Before we do that, we'll set the brakes manually on our foot pedals. And brakes are now off. Alright. Please prepare for departure. Ladies and gentlemen, we're departing. And we'll be airborne here shortly. Engine spooling. Keep the nose down because we are heavy. Max fuel load. Alright. Let's pick it up. We are airborne. Gear is coming up. Flaps are coming up.
Foxtrot Mike 1019er is passing 800 feet, climbing 11,000 feet.
Dahmer Foxtrot Mike 1019er, Robert Center altimeter 29.9er7, continue to envelope as planned.
Alright, let's turn that inertial separator off. And the ITT temp warning was where had a turbine spooled up too fast, too hot actually. So pull back on that. Microsoft has made some changes, and there's some things that are different in the game now. And that's the first time I've seen internal turbine temp warning, so turbine temp warning. Well done me, yay! I believe our flaps are up also. Flaps are up. Passing through flight level 3000. Here comes those clouds we saw from the distance. And it looks like we're going to have weather like this almost the entire flight, flying with real time and real weather. And I don't think we can get data from where we're landing is too far off, but let's go ahead and see if we can find Lagos here for weather data. DWMM. No data is available, but it's locked in there. Usually you have to be within a few hundred nautical miles before you can start retrieving weather data. So no access to that quite yet. I don't recall ground giving me instructions to climb past 11,000, which they have not. They've said to climb and maintain 11,000. So we'll do just that and hold there until they give us directions to continue our ascent. Alright. Here's the part where I get to kick back and relax for the next 2.5 hours. Let's see what the flight computer's telling me. We have a estimated time of arrival at 7:15 p.m. local time. So, yeah. Current time right now is almost 1:30 p.m. So, and I think we're traveling a time zone on our journey today, maybe even 2 time zones. I'm not a very versed world traveler, so I couldn't tell you where the boundaries of time zones reside, country to country, continent to continent. But, so I'm increasing our flight climb to 2,000 feet per minute. It should slow us down to about 157 knots, get us up there a little bit quicker. Looks like we have a tailwind picking up at this altitude, so I have almost a 10-knot tailwind coming in. Looks like from about 275 degrees, so a little bit west by northwest. So that'll probably shave a few minutes off our flight time today. I'm not sure how long it'll stay as a tailwind. I don't know what the winds at upper levels are, and I have no idea what it's going to be at cruise. Excuse me. Usually I like to set our cruising altitude for 28,000 feet. That's a good place for this airframe. Used to pick 30,000 because this, to me, felt cool and interesting. And hey, look at me, I'm a big boy pilot. I can fly up there with the jumbo jets and stuff. But it's actually dangerous if you do that in real life because you're within just a few thousand feet of your maximum. And if you have a change in barometric air pressure, you could end up either losing air pressure or breaking a window, or worst case scenario, blowing a window out, losing consciousness and control of the aircraft. So if I were to cross over flight level 100, 1,000 feet remaining in the climb. gotta say, it is beautiful down there. Look at all that lush green. It's amazing how the
Dover 019er climb and maintain flight level 190.
Climb and maintain flight level 190, Dover 019er.
Alright, let's dial in flight level 190. Alright, up we go. Looks like we're above most of the weather. We're soon to be above most of the weather. Here's our VFR map. We're gonna head almost due east. Maybe slightly east by northeast. Then we make a swing to northeast here in roughly a half hour. This is our first nav point. This lake here looks really pretty on the map, so we're gonna fly almost right over that. We should be able to see down these little fingerlings on the lake here. Kind of curious to see what we'll see there. Probably have about 20 minutes before we're on that lake. We should be able to see it here once we level out. And then ONPAL, ONPAL, or Oscar Nancy Papa Alpha Lima, is our first nav point there. And those all have official names like SIDS and stars and stuff like that. And I couldn't tell you what they all mean. I'm not a real pilot. I don't do this in real life. I know they have some relevance and meaning for inbound and outbound traffic. What those significances are, I could not tell. But it looks like from ONPAL, we probably have about 30 minutes to DPIG here. And then we kind of turn back to the south, east by southeast. And there's this huge lake here. We're gonna cross over part of it, and that should be really pretty. Expecting to see some boats on that. And we head out towards the coast, and we hit this point here called Ty, and we're going to swing up to the north, and we're going to hit this nav point, which is Motel 504. Once we hit that, I'd imagine we're going to start our descent for our initial approach, and then once we hit this nav point here behind it, we'll start descending on this leg, and then once we reach this point here, we should probably be down to just maybe a few thousand feet, making our preparations for our final approach onto runway 18 right. There's a runway right there, supposedly. So that's what we're doing and where we're going today. And looks like here we have 1 hour remaining in this leg, so it must be a little bit bigger than I thought, longer than I thought. We're about ready to come up on flight level 190. Should be leveling out here in another 30 seconds or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset our barometers. They no longer are set on actual barometric pressure once you're above flight level 180, 18,000 feet.
Delta 019er climb and maintain flight level 290.
Climb and maintain flight level 290, Doher 019er.
Yeah, work with that. Alright, we're now have been instructed to make our final step up to flight level 290, 29,000 feet. That should be our cruising altitude for most of the flight, so I don't expect any major bumps. We did have a 10 nautical mile an hour tailwind that turned to a 7 knot tailwind, and now it's a 3 nautical mile headwind, slight headwind, so coming out of the northeast. So that's actually pretty calm air. Usually the crosswinds can be varied, but usually 30 to 50 knots is not unexpected. I think the craziest headwind and tailwind I've encountered was I think 68 knot crosswinds, and that was flying over the Alps. And I don't think in real life this airframe would be safe for air travel with winds like that, but somehow we managed. We are 24 minutes in today's flight, shooting for a cruising altitude of flight level 290, 29,000 feet. We just crossed over flight level 210, 21,000 feet. We have 8,000 feet remaining, 7,720 feet, roughly. We're making our way on up. Roughly 1,500 feet per minute is our ascent rate. Looks like clear skies. It's slightly overcast and hazy out there, but everything doesn't look too bad off both the wings. So I'll take it. I will take it. Clear on radar. The only thing I don't like I don't think is very realistic. A lot of these light clouds would return an image to radar, and I don't know if that's one of two things. One, that the game just doesn't interpret that data unless it exceeds a certain value. Like, you have to be mostly cloudy before you can see them on your radar, which is not realistic. You should be able to see even light stuff. It should show up as light green traces on our weather radar here, and you should just see these patterns that unfold into clouds, and as they get heavier, denser, and more full of water, they go from light green to yellow to red, and we're not seeing that. So it's either the game doesn't display that data in a usable way, or our radar dish is pointed above those clouds. So one thing we should be able to do, and I think Microsoft is going to give us this option on this airframe in the future, is to slew the radar angle. And what that means is we should be able to point that radar dish both up and down, depending if we're below the weather or above it. And that'll allow us to more accurately see what's actually out there above us, in front of us, to the side of us, all around us. And currently we can't do that. So that's just one of my little gripes, one of my little kvetches. And if they could fix anything, that would be really cool. So, yeah. And the irony is, you can actually see clouds here on our center display. So I'm not really sure what's up with that. Anywho, I will get off the soapbox. I'm sure someone else needs the wood. Flight plan was calling for 31,000 feet, but I'm not going to go anywhere close to that. And if we're directed to continue our ascent, I'm just going to request a permission to descend 2,000 feet to where we're at right now. So nothing will change, and we'll just cruise it to flight level 290, 29,000 feet. I'm going to grab a cup of coffee, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm just not going to be talking, so please enjoy the flight. There that headwind is, it's picked up now 17 nautical miles per hour. So kind of looks like right around 21,000 feet was the sweet spot for wind, but not so much for fuel consumption. Generally, the higher an aircraft is, the less fuel required on the jet engine. So the jet can pull in a lot of really thin air and still make use of it to burn fuel. That's why a jet engine compresses air. So if you don't have a lot of it, you have to be going fast. And one thing about this airframe is it gets up and moves fairly quickly. Cruising altitude is around 300 knots. Published cruising altitude is 315 knots.
Docker 019er climb and maintain flight level 310.
Yeah. We're not going to
Climb
do that.
and maintain flight level 310, Docker 019er.
So we're going to request a decrease by 2,000 feet.
Robert Center, Docker 019er. Request flight level 290.
Docker 019er climb and maintain flight level 290.
Climb and maintain flight level 290, Docker 019er.
And for people that might just be joining, the female pilot, that's my wife. So she does all the heavy lifting, all the voice comms, communications. Goes through our checklists, both landing, mid-flight, pre-flight, all that stuff. All those fun checklists. And all I do is push the buttons and the sticks and the throttles and the pedals and do the takeoffs and landings, and everything else is in her more than capable hands. So that's why I hear a female voice talking with on the radio with all the ground communications. Let's push the throttle up a little bit. With the strong enough tailwind, this plane here, the fastest I've had the airframe was Mach 0.551. So just a tad over the speed of sound, half the speed of sound. So that's pretty fast for a propeller. In this case, turboprop. One thing a propeller aircraft can't do and shouldn't do is approach the sound barrier. What happens is not that the airframe can't handle the G-forces, the stress. It's actually the propeller blades themselves. Propeller blades are not perfect. They're all slightly different in their tolerances from one another, both in dimension and weight. And what would happen if we approach the speed of sound? All those blades, the ones that are out of harmony with the airflow, are going to start vibrating and getting hot. And those vibrations are going to cause those blades to want to vibrate even more. And if that condition goes left unchecked, you end up just shearing prop blades off, and then you're in a world of hurt. You're in a crash situation at that point. So, yeah. So that's why we don't try to shoot for speed of sound in turboprops. So we're actually cruising at 316 knots. See right here, our true airspeed, 317 knots. We're about 85% on the throttle. We'll hold it right there. I've actually backed off just a little bit. Let's see if our airspeed continues to pick up just a little bit. Might just a few knots. I don't think we're going to gain anything significant. From what I've read, Microsoft has made a lot of changes and updates to flight modeling, weather modeling, and those things across all the aircraft. So this does feel different to me, because usually I could be at full throttle right now and just barely hitting 315 nautical miles an hour with a headwind. Even without a headwind, it would be difficult to reach this speed. So if this is realistic, then I think that's a step in the right direction. And you see here, we're actually traveling at Mach 0.25, 526. So we right now are traveling at slightly over 1/2 the speed of sound. So we're moving pretty fast. What that boils down to. So right now, this is the fastest I have flown in this airframe ever. So we are right now 34 minutes into today's flight. We have 29 minutes and 50 seconds remaining on this leg of our journey today. And once we hit that leg, we'll pick up the big leg, the longest leg, I think, of our journey right after that. now I am going to step away. My coffee cup, for some reason, is now empty. I'm going to turn the mic off, but I'll be back in a few minutes. All right, I am back, and I was just looking at a few things here on the screen. We are roughly 125 nautical miles from our first waypoint. It doesn't feel natural for me to say our. It feels like I should be saying our. And I'm going to walk away for just a second. My dogs want to go out, so I'll be right back. outside. "42 minutes into today's flight. Roughly, if everything is relatively equal to when we departed, roughly 1 hour and 50 minutes remains in the today's flight. Really pretty out there. Everything around here looks relatively flat. So I'm not sure of any mountains, what their names would be on the African continent. I know there's I think Mount Kilimanjaro, but that's over on the eastern part of the country. And oh, there's a few of the mountains that they're right there on the tip of my brain, but I can't spit them out. I can't think of their names. It looks like the headwind has died down just a little bit, and our airspeed now has increased a little bit also. We're now traveling at Mach 0.531. So, yay. Roughly 98 nautical miles remaining in this leg of the flight today. The computer says we have roughly 19 minutes is our estimated time of arrival for our first nav point. So new stuff. I'm a home brewer of beer. Not distilled spirits, not wine or anything like that. The home distillation of spirits, I believe, is illegal where I live, so I don't do that, but beer is. And where I live in the state of North Carolina, they allow people to brew for personal consumption within their own home up to 200 gallons a year of beer, and that's calendar year. So back in June, both my wife and I took vacation. She said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "It doesn't really matter, whatever you want to do." She goes, "You know, I kind of miss the beer you used to make. I'd kind of like to start seeing you make more of it. So I spent a solid day getting my beer keezer back operating, and I still had carbon dioxide in the tank, but my tank was out of inspection. So cleaned the kegs, and they were just full on nasty. I'm not going to go into describing them, but old beer does not smell bad, believe it or not. It can be moldy and it can look funky, but it actually doesn't smell bad. It won't make your stomach do somersaults, but it will make your stomach kind of start making hungry noises. And just smells like beer that's just a little old. I can't describe it any other way. But yeah, so the kegs cleaned out fairly easily. That was only about 1.5 hours. But I had to pull the drip tubes out, and there's a little tube that comes in for the air, or the CO2, to help direct your gas downwards. And when I was cleaning those, the drip tubes came out cleaned up just fine. Brushed them out inside and out, reinserted them. However, one of the drip tubes didn't want to go back in, and since that was my first time removing the drip tubes for the gas, I'd never removed it before, so it just been that way from the factory when that keg shipped. So I had to order a new little drip tube for the gas and some O-rings, and that took care of it just fine. So yeah, that was a little bit of an adventure, and so I started brewing, and all the kegs are full right now.
$019er contact the car center on 129.1. Good day.
Good day.
129.1.019er. Dakar Center, Dakar Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, flight level 290.
Dakar Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, Dakar Center, continue to Oslo as planned.
So what's happening, if you see this yellow line here, we're changing airspaces. So we're being handed off from this controller of this airspace to the controller of this airspace. And they were just giving us the handoff, and we just spoke to them, and they said, hey, just keep on trucking as normal, as usual. So, yep. So, yeah, I've got 3 kegs that are drinkable right now, and 1 more that still needs about 2 more weeks. And my CO2 tank went empty, and got that inspected, and got that filled up and put back on, and then our freezer went out in our garage freezer. It's an old refrigerator, actually. The house we live in now, we had built for us back in 2005, and we brought our refrigerator with us from when we lived in South Carolina, the house we had there. And we bought this refrigerator. It was our first refrigerator that we'd ever bought. We had bought washers and dryers and tons of those. So we brought it with us from South Carolina to North Carolina. And then about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there was a special at Lowe's on their appliances. And usually with refrigerators, about 1,005 is our upper limit for what we don't want to spend over. And they had this one refrigerator, and I'm not going to talk bad about the manufacturer, but we had never owned one of their appliances. and they had this refrigerator that was normally $6,000, and it was on sale for, it was right at, I think, $2,100 after rebate, and the rebate was applied right there and then. And I think it was the refrigerator was $2,400 with a $300 instant rebate. And so we said, well, let's go for it. And our older refrigerator, I think was, well, I know it was a GE. And what I don't remember off the top of my head was the actual size of it. And I think it was like 19 cubic feet. And the refrigerator that we bought was, I believe, 31 cubic feet. And yeah, we had the measured space, but believe it or not, it fits. It just sticks out a little bit further than the old one did, but yeah, the doors open just fine. Nothing hits the island, and life is good. So we had the old refrigerator put in our garage, and we used the non-frozen side for, you know, drinks, sodas, cans, bottles of beer, gallons of milk, cream, that kind of stuff. And the freezer side, we would just you know, go grocery shopping when sales were going on, and just load up on, hey, instead of getting 2 packs of chicken, let's get 3 or 4, and hey, this steak is on sale, or whatever. And that would just be our overflow. So the weekend that my CO2 went out, we just grabbed a few sodas on the way out, and I was asking my wife, hey, do you want to taste this new batch of beer? And I went to dispense some in a cup, and it was nothing. It was just a drip. And I looked at my CO2 gauge, and it was at 0, completely empty. So ironically, I got a soda, and I said, well, hey, these sodas feel not so cold. And stuff would usually be ice cold, and these were cold, but not ice cold. So I thought, well, maybe my wife had bought some new sodas, and they're not, you know, haven't spent enough time in the fridge, and they haven't cooled down to where they should be or would be. And a couple days later, grabbed another soda, and it felt like it was a little bit warmer. And that same night, I think we were going to grab some frozen pizzas to put in the oven, and they were not frozen. They were frozen, but they weren't frozen through and through. They had a little bit of flex to them. That's what we realized, the freezer was going out. And then a few days later, it just started blowing the GFCI in the garage. It would just pop it, pop, pop, pop. So we had to unplug it, and we transferred all the frozen foods to the inside freezer. And I don't know how my wife did it, but she got everything to fit. And it's truly a marvel of domestic engineering that she could even do that. So yeah, so we had to buy a little mini freezer, so we don't need a big giant, you know, fridge freezer combination. And all the beer and sodas, we just brought those in. We put all the beer in the fridge, but some of the sodas we just put on the floor in our dining room. And if they warm up, that's fine. It's not going to affect flavor or taste or anything like that. There's a Finger Lake down there. We're about ready to fly past it, but it's kind of different looking. And that's the small lake, so we're going to fly past closer to where we're landing a bigger version of that lake. So, anywho, long story short, we have the new mini freezer, which I think is 4.9 cubic feet, which is about the same, probably a little bit more freezer space than what we used to have. Takes a smaller footprint, less electricity, all that fun stuff. So Yep. So today we'll probably be putting food into it from the indoor freezer to take some of the burden off that appliance. So started making beer again, and we had our old house fridge that we had moved to the garage about 5 years ago when we updated our kitchen appliance, and yeah. The funny thing about that kitchen appliance, when we first bought it, we had a problem within 3 months. It would drip water. And it was really ironic because it would drip water at the bottom of the freezer. So the first refrigerator that we had bought had a pull-out lower freezer. And the one that we ended up getting replaced is the same design. So the first freezer, we noticed water on the floor, and we thought, well, maybe we dropped an ice cube and it kind of rolled up under the front there. We couldn't see it. Cleaned it up, and the next day they had a bigger puddle of water, and we noticed when we pulled the freezer out, you could see water on the sides. So called the vendor, placed a service call, under warranty. I think it was just 3 months old. They sent a technician out. He was nice. And he says, yeah, there's this ice that grows over this liquid drain in the bottom. So if there's any moisture that condenses, it drips down and it's supposed to go through this drain, and it goes into a drip pan. And the drip pan is near the compressor, and the heat from the compressor just causes it to evaporate off. So I said, well, how common is it for this to freeze? And he's like, well, it happens every once in a while. Shouldn't run into it again. So okay, I'm gonna take the professional's opinion. It's like going to the doctor. The doctor says, hey, you should change your diet or give up bad habit, and you might want to listen. So okay, so problem is fixed. So life is good for about 2 months, and sure enough, the water leak comes back, and this time it's dripping even more water. And so we called the vendor back, and we said, hey, we're not happy with this fridge. And it's kind of weird because the very first fridge that we got from this manufacturer, when we would go to dispense water on the door, water would actually come out through one of the lights inside the roof of the refrigerator, which it shouldn't. It should come out the door. And they sent me a replacement, and the guys left right after they hooked it up, and the replacement did the same thing. So that was actually the third refrigerator, the same model of the one that we bought. It was on this huge sale. I mean, it was like a 70% off sale. So we're now on the third refrigerator. The door starts leaking once, and a guy fixes it, and 2 months later it starts leaking again. I call the manufacturer and I say, hey, I've got a problem with this fridge. I'm really kind of bummed out because it's a $6,000 refrigerator, and normally I couldn't afford this. Would never dream of paying $6,000 for a refrigerator. But the thing is, once it's out of warranty, these repairs can get more expensive than a car repair. And if I have to dump thousands of dollars into this, that's money we really can't afford. And the woman I spoke to was really nice. And she goes, well, we're the manufacturer of 3 different models, 3 different brands. And she goes, here's what we're going to do. She goes, let me talk to my manager, and let me call you back. So she got my cell number, and she calls back, not super quick, but like within a half hour, which I appreciated. And she goes, okay, I spoke with my manager, and she goes, tell you what, She goes, you bought this from Lowe's. Just go back to Lowe's. And she goes, let us know which Lowe's you want to go to, if it's the same one where you bought it at or a different one. We said, no, it's the same one where we bought it from. Let's just keep it simple. And she goes, okay. She goes, we're going to put a $6,000 credit in your name. She goes, the only thing is, if you buy a refrigerator that's $3,000, you're going to lose the other $3,000 in credit. And you won't be able to get that back, ever. So we went and we looked, and we spent about we probably spent about 15 minutes looking through all the refrigerators they had. And we finally came across one that was a different brand. It was one of the 3 that the manufacturer said they made and sold and serviced, and ended up talking with the salesperson about the old refrigerator and said, well, why were they so cheap? And he says, oh, the vendor was discontinuing them because there was an issue with water leakage. And one of the things we noticed when the old refrigerator was removed, our wood floors were warped, and we had to take pictures, and we had to get a reimbursement for that. So that was a pain in and of itself. But so we ended up getting a refrigerator that was a little bit cheaper than the one that we bought, but it was actually the same size and very similar design, and so it holds a lot of stuff. And anyways, just the fact that my wife was able to pack in what looked like twice the volume that would be needed of frozen goods into it is truly astounding in my mind. So yeah, it's our refrigerator story of the day. Looks like we're coming up on our next waypoint. We are roughly 1 minute away from it. Estimated time of arrival is 55 seconds. And we might be transitioning airspaces also. We'll keep an eye on that. Alright, sleepy. Got home late last night. Ended up working late. And got home about, it's almost 9:30. Which is late for me, 9:30 p.m. Usually I'm home anywhere between 7 and 8 p.m. You know, some days I get a little bit of a break and maybe I'm home at 5:30 or 6. But yeah, the last 6 weeks have been very brutish, and just a lot of stuff at work going on. And yeah, I was just so thankful to get home last night. Ended up eating dinner and a snack, and finally fell asleep last night about midnight. And woke up at 4:30. And yeah, I'm on my 3rd cup of coffee, but it doesn't seem to be having any effect. Alright, that was a silent transition. So we now have 52 minutes remaining in this leg of the flight. This should be the longest leg. Let's check our VFR map. We'll see where we're at. All right. So there's where we departed from. Here's where we're at. Here's where we're going. And once we get here, going to turn around to the south. So I'm guessing this is also going to be about an hour. This is close to an hour. This was 32 minutes. So 32 minutes, there's an hour and 20 minutes, and an hour and 70 minutes. Well, 170 minutes, which is like 2 hours, 1 hour and 50 minutes, sorry. And then we, from D-Pig to here, so looks like 1, 2.5, so maybe about 3 hours total. So we should be hitting this point at roughly the 2.5 hour mark, and that's where we're going to start slowing down and descending in preparation for our initial and final approach. So, yep. Looks like headwinds are holding true at 22 knots, still out of north by northeast, so. And everything was clear all the way out to 200 nautical miles, so, okay. And this is not the big lake that I mentioned. There's one that's like bigger than both of these put together, and it's further to the east. And I could not tell you the name of anything around me. To be honest with you, my knowledge of the African continent is extremely limited. I've never been here, so just the digital representation of it is all I'm probably ever going to see in real life. But from what I've seen in the flight sim anyways, it looks beautiful. So So it looks like, I was just looking at the flight plan. So here we are right here, going between On Paul and D-Pig. And then once we reach D-Pig, we come about on tide, and after this we'll start preparing for our initial approach. And I'd imagine once we hit this point right here, we'll probably be on initial approach. So be 32 miles away from the airfield. And yeah. So right after this, we go from MM504 to LAG. I do remember one time I did have a lot of USR nav points. I had like 12 in a row. They were all called USR, and the aircraft would not follow GPS guidance. So hopefully I don't run into that. But the time that it did that weird thing, I was able to land manually just fine, but wasn't expecting that. So yeah, no surprises please today, no surprises. 1 hour and 11 minutes in today's flight. If we're holding true to flight plan, Total flight time today should be 2 hours and 35 minutes roughly, but I don't think we're going to hit that. I think we're going to arrive closer to the 3-hour mark, so we'll see. You never know, we could lose the headwind, it could turn back into a tailwind, and we could gain a few more knots, or it could get much worse, hard to say. But everything so far has been really clear. Oh yeah! Really clear. And yeah. One thing I was going to set was the heading bug, but it's already set. So you see that blue, this thing right here, and it's going to move because I'm going to move it. But basically, we want to have this 180 degrees off from our landing. And the reason for that is it gives us a method to turn around using autopilot. And for turns, autopilot is going to be a lot more accurate than my old self. So I'd just rather use autopilot to bring us onto a new heading. And then once I'm lined up with the runway again, I'll take it back manually. So we're coming in to land on runway 18 right, I think. So 180 degrees from 180 is 360 or 0. So we set our heading bug 180 degrees in the opposite direction so we can turn around and fly parallel to the runway. And that makes lining up for a second approach so much easier. So much easier. So, yep. We're approaching some more airspace changes. I'm not sure if we'll get directions to change ground tower frequencies or anything like that. And I'm going to step away for just 1 minute. I'll be back. roughly 38 minutes remain in this leg. So we're moving, we're trucking. I think the headwind's going to put a little damper in the flight plan in terms of how expeditiously we're going to land today. But a half-hour delay is not so bad, so that's not so bad. Delta Victor Motel. Nope. J? Grr, look that up in my notes. Delta Nancy Motel. Okay. Delta Nancy Motel. So we're halfway through. 467 nautical miles remain. We are, time-wise, 1 hour and, so yeah, roughly 3 hours, maybe 2 hours and 50 minutes. So, yeah, it's almost at sea level. So, here's all of our frequencies that the software will handle for us automatically. So, and we're still free and clear. No moisture, nothing bad. So, yeah. It does look like we have some heavy low altitude overcast clouds up ahead. It looks like the further east we go, we're going to be flying through some of those. I don't know if they extend all the way to the coast. I think they break up a little bit. They kind of thin out right before the coast. But yeah, we'll see. See what shakes out. Moving forward. So the beers I made, let's talk about those for a little bit. All four are they are IPAs, Imperial Pale Ales. One of my favorite beers, but I'm not a fan of traditional West Coast IPAs. I like them. I think they have their place, but I think they're overdone. When IPAs first hit the scene, I don't know the time exactly when that happened, if it was early 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, somewhere in that time frame. Could even be late 80s. And I know people have been home brewing since 77, beer anyways. The home distillation of any form of ethanol in any beverage, beer, mead, wine, or spirits, was deemed illegal by the U.S. government. And in 1977, one of the things President Carter did that I agree with is he lifted those laws. He said, hey, people want to make beer, they want to make wine, want to make mead, go for it. Just no hard liquor. And yeah, I agree with that. I think you should be able to distill home spirits just as long as the person distilling takes a course and gets a certificate through this course. I'm not saying big dollars, maybe, you know, I don't know how long of a course would have to be. Let's say 8 hours. You could do it continuously in one day or break it up over a weekend or over a couple weekdays. But I'd say the course would probably be, let's say to include licensing fees and everything, $400. And you don't have to take the course once, but every year you just have to pay like a $100 or $200 in licensing fees to maintain a home brewer's license. And conversely, by doing this, you'd be opening yourself to inspection. So the government could come in to make sure that you're not producing 500-gallon runs out of your garage. So I don't know what a good limit could be on hard distilled spirits. I don't know if 50 gallons would not be enough, or 50 gallons would be too much, or if 200 gallons like beer would be better. But I will say this, 200 gallons of hard liquor, whether it's whiskey, rum, gin, pick your poison, that's a lot of booze. I mean, that is a lot of booze. That's enough alcohol to pickle Kitty Dukakis. And I don't know if anyone remembers her. She was the wife of Mike Dukakis. And yeah, she went to the Betty Ford Clinic. She was a hardcore alcoholic and was melting down shoe polish in rehab to drink the alcohol out of it. Gross. Yeah, that's really gross. And that's like crackhead behavior. And I wish her the best. You know, I'm not making fun of her. Just something that has happened. So yeah, there's got to be a limit on everything, even if it's things we enjoy doing, or we like consuming. Because you know, you don't want to open up a black market. You don't want people selling hooch to the neighborhood kids. You don't want people selling bad hooch. And the thing about spirits is, if you're not careful, you can kill someone. Usually when you distill spirits, the first so much of your production is methanol. You need to throw that away. You don't want to consume that. I wouldn't even keep it in my house. I would just take it outside and dispose of it. And you know, have a fire. Start your fire with your methanol run. But yeah. That's the only thing that's radically different, besides the amount of heat. You have chiller coils that you're going to distill your distillates with, cool those down so they actually condense to liquid. But you know, I might get into distillation of home spirits if it were legal, just to give it a shot and see the result. It's a whole nother type of brewing. You start with a mash, just like beer. However, where beer ends with the same mash, with distillation of spirits, you actually boil the alcohol off over several runs, and what's remaining are spirits. And you still use hydrometers and things like that, but you're using a different type of hydrometers, weighted differently. Ethanol is a lot thinner than water. So the hydrometers for water, for beer, or wine, won't read true in ethanol. But yeah, I think you buy some of the still kits. They'll take about $1,000. So there's a little bit more upfront cost, but you don't have all the tail end costs. So on beer, your upfront costs might just be your kettle. It might be your buckets with spigots on them for fermentation, and you bottle out of the same bucket. And yeah, your upfront costs for bottling and all that gear, they're not outlandish. You're probably looking at $500 investment. But yeah, distilled spirits are a little bit more expensive. I think your upfront costs would be a lot more expensive. But producing the amount of alcohol you could produce, even if it was 50 gallons a year, think about it this way. If I were to do a 5-gallon batch of ethanol, or 5-gallon beer of wort, I think my takeaway from that would be about 1.5 gallons or a gallon of distilled spirits. I could be wrong, could be much less or much more, but I'm thinking I'm going to lose about 80% of what I have trying to boil the alcohol out of that and condense it, and further distill that, condense it, and after I've let off the first runs that you don't want to drink because that's methanol, you'd have your heart run, your middle run, I think, is what's after your first shots, which are called. I could be missing something, I'm not sure. But every one of those runs imparts different things, and what you get in the alcohol, what you get in flavor, and I think the heart runs are what you want to save, and the tails are not as flavorful, and they start picking up these weird, bizarre flavors. So what you would use those tails for, or to redistill back into maybe your next run, or if you just wanted something to clean the sink with, you'd have ethanol for that. Or if you had to degrease some engine parts, or degrease a really good pasta pan after it's been baked, that would probably do the trick. But yeah, one day I might get into it, but yeah, not today, not anytime soon. But I think it would be fun, at the very least, to make. I made 2 gallons of homemade rum, for example. And I've seen people make rum. You can actually buy molasses. It comes in like these 25-gallon buckets, 10-gallon buckets. It's not very expensive. Sugar companies, when they extract different forms of sugar, molasses is a byproduct, which is, I think, only about 35 to 40% sugar. And they can't use it, and I think years and years and years ago they used to just throw it away or use it as feed for animals and plants. But you can buy it. I don't think it's expensive. I don't know the price. I don't know if it's $30 for 10 gallons or $100 for 10 gallons. But yeah, I think it's closer to the $30 mark. But cost-wise, when you're all said and done, after your equipment's paid for and you've got bottles and caps and all those things, you figure...
$0.19er contact across center on 123.1. Good day.
You know, leaving the airspace.
123.1 for Dahar 019er. Across center Dahar Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, flight level 290.
Dahar Foxtrot Mike 1019er across center. Continue as planned.
Alright. No major changes. I like it. 17 minutes, 30 seconds roughly remaining in this leg. Then we'll kind of turn to the southeast, I think. Before turning to the, it was the north. Yeah, anyways, you know, if you buy $50 of ingredients, for example, whether you're using molasses or you're just mashing grains, if you could produce, let's just say 3 750 milliliter bottles, or let's just say 3 500 milliliter bottles, so not quite a quart, but close, you know. So like 24 ounces, I think. That's not a bad sized bottle. You know, back when I was growing up, if you bought a fifth, it was 32 ounces. So, yeah. I think it was 32 ounces. God, what if I'm wrong? I'm gonna look like an idiot. Anyways, bottles today are different sizes, ranging from a liter, which is a little bit bigger than the quart, but they have these weird sizes, I think due to inflation, so people can buy liquor without having to buy a $50 liter size bottle. They can buy a $27 half liter size bottle. So they look goofy. I don't like it. And just want to see prices go back to normal. But things like inflation are which would drive people to make some really interesting choices. And you know, it wasn't inflation that brought about the liquor market. It was actually during Prohibition. You know, Prohibition was something that never should have happened. That was just driven by puritanical desires and religion, which has no place within our political climate. You know, neither does bad decision making, but you know, those things should be left out of politics for sure. So a lot of the laws we have are still kind of puritanical laws, like not being able to buy hard liquor on Sundays, for example. Those laws came out of the Protestant Reformation back in the late 1700s. Here in America, because I actually followed the colonists over from England in the 1600s. So, yeah, Protestants brought that with them. And I'm not knocking on Protestants, I'm just saying historically. So, yeah. So, what I am going to do next year, this might be like over the winter kind of a thing, and it will occupy one of my fermenters. And something that also happened when I got back into beer making with my wife was I had 3 plastic fermenters, actually carboys. I think they were 6-gallon carboys, and 2 of them were broken. So I bought glass ones from the brew store, and that was definitely money well spent. Got to be careful moving them and picking them up and cleaning them and stuff, but they don't scratch, and it's amazing. You can get yeast, it's just caked on, it's sitting there for 2-3 weeks, and you just put some cleaner in there and you fill them full with water, let them sit for an hour, come back out with your brush, and everything just wipes right off. It's amazing. So I might end up buying a third one of those for mead, because mead has a longer distillation cycle, and from what I understand, the longer you let your mash just sit on the yeast, the better the flavor is in the end. And so mead basically is just 3 ingredients: water, honey, and yeast, and that's it. And if you want to include a bottle, a cap as an ingredient, those would be the 4th and 5th ingredients in your recipe. But should be able to get mead easy that's in the 10 to 15%. So that's 20 to 30 proof, and that's pretty incredible that you can get. I wouldn't call that a true spirit, but you're getting pretty damn close, because schnapps, I believe, is like, I want to say that's like 50 or 60 proof, so 25-30% alcohol. So you're right there with schnapps. And I don't know, don't quote me, I could be wrong on this too, but I believe that schnapps is a distilled spirit. It could be just like mead is, non-distilled spirit, but I'm going to count it as being distilled. So I think next year I'm going to try making some mead, and that is one of those alcohols, much like wine. The longer it sits, the better it tastes, and the more your flavor is developed in your final product. So I actually tried to make hard cider years ago, and I learned the hard way. There are certain brew stores that have really good people, and where I live in North Carolina, we do have several stores where the staff is awesome. And I'm not going to call anyone out, whether you're good or bad, because I don't want to have the appearance or look like I'm pointing a finger, which I kind of am, but it's just based on experience. But there is one brew store that I've had a bad experience with, and I just don't go there. But when I was brand new, they would say, "What do you want?" The first time I went in, I was making a cherry wheat ale, and I was new to doing recipe making. And back then, I didn't know there was software you could buy that was computer-based, so I bought an app, I think from the Apple Store, back when I had an iPhone. And that app was actually decent. I think it was $7.99 or $9.99, $10 for the app. Let's say $10, and it would do everything that my software, Beersmith 2, does. Beersmith 3, but it was a scale down. But it was pretty close. It would give you an estimate of color, final alcohol, and your finished product, your starting and finishing gravities, and all these things you need to know. So that's how I started making beer. And when I was in that store, I'm not going to say where they are either, but they said, "What are you making?" And I said, I'm going to make a cherry wheat ale. And they kind of looked at it, kind of screwed their face up and made a funny face like, "You don't know what the hell you're doing. You don't want those ingredients." And the guy goes, "Well, you got 10 pounds of wheat. You only need 5 of that. And you should have 3 pounds of this, and at least 2 pounds of this." And he's just going off and shaking his head like, "Look at this idiot." In his mind, he's probably looking at me as if I'm an idiot. And if you run a business, your customers, you shouldn't be looking at them like they're idiots. You should be looking at them like, "Hey, you're people I need to treat with at least a little bit of respect, put on the appearance that I'm neutral, and you definitely don't want to call your customers idiots." So he tries to sell me what he thinks I need, and I said, no, I want what's on my recipe. And he's like, "Well, okay. He gives me that look and the sound in his voice like, "It's your funeral, man. If you want it, Okay. I tried to tell you. And yeah, anyways, that came out really good. That was back when I just started bottling, and I made them for a party. It was supposed to be like a white, very pale colored beer, German wheat beer, well it was, German cherry wheat. And I didn't know that you don't want to put your fruit in a very lightly colored beer because it was pink. But it was very good. And like my next 10 batches after that were not as good. They're actually pretty horrific, but a lot of that was me. I made some mistakes, and I was curious. You know, recipes will say don't use more than 10% of this type of grain. Well, I want to know what will happen if I use 30%. Where are the limits? What does it taste like? And one thing I might do, I did this years ago. I took a tour of a brewery, and they actually had samples of these different grains, and these were the grains that went into their beers. And it would give you an idea for the flavors that each grain brought to the table. And it was really interesting. They're all good. Kind of tasted like I was eating breakfast cereal. And yeah, one day I just might go to the brew store and say, hey, I want 1 ounce of everything packaged individually. And I'm sure they're going to hate me for that. But I would like to try each grain and just take some notes. Hey, this one tastes like chocolate. This tastes like coffee. This tastes like oil. This one here tasted like breakfast cereal, for example. It tastes like shredded wheat. And that way I know what each one brings to the table. Now, one thing the software does, it gives you an explanation of the flavor and what to expect, and it gives you diastic powers and what you can expect for conversion, and those things which are all important. But reading about a flavor and tasting a flavor are oftentimes two very different things. So sometimes just having that depth perception can help really drive home in our memories what different things bring to the table. And bakers would also probably agree, because brewing and baking are very, very similar. Brewing a beer is almost like baking a cake or a bread. So yeah, that's one thing on my punch list to do before my 80s. I'll just say that. So anyways, mead is on the horizon. Yeah, and I've actually had store-bought mead a few times. It was really, really good. So I was talking about something earlier and I forgot it and just remembered it. I made hard cider once, and this was one time again that I went to that brew store that I was talking about, and I told them, I said, I want to make some apple cider. What's a good yeast to use? And they said, oh, you need to use champagne yeast. And I said, really? Won't that convert too much alcohol? Because champagne yeast is usually viable up to like 15% alcohol. It's really durable, tough, strong, outstanding yeast. Most yeast will die off right around 7 to 10%. This is too much alcohol. The environment becomes too toxic. They end up poisoning themselves. They die. And he's like, no, this is what you want. It'll be fine. It'll be sweet. All this stuff. So I took his word for it. And this is before I had a carboy. So I just bought a bottle of cider from the store. Just made sure it didn't have any sulfates or sulfites or any treatments like that, because they will prohibit yeast growth. And found a store brand of cider that was just apples. Apples and water were the only two ingredients. I brought it home and dumped out a glass. I didn't dump it out, I drank it. And then I put the yeast in and put the cap on and started fermenting, and plastic jug would kind of balloon out. Now I'd have to open the cap to relieve the pressure, which is called burping, every couple days. And it got really clear, and it initially turned like this really pretty green color. And then it turned this really interesting gold color. And it just kept producing gas and producing gas. And I made this for Thanksgiving. We were going over to my aunt's house, and I was telling her I'm going to make some hard cider and bring that over. It's going to be great. And I never tried it. And I get over there and pour everyone a little, 2-ounce pour so everyone can taste it. And it was basically pure alcohol. I'm not going to say pure alcohol. It just had no flavor to it. So it converted almost every available sugar molecule into alcohol, and it left nothing left for flavor. And it was like drinking a bone-dry white wine with absolutely no flavor. And it just wasn't a good thing to drink straight. Now, it probably wouldn't have been a bad thing if you just mixed some apple juice in it. Probably would have been just right. So, yeah, that was my first experience that when you make cider, you do not want to use a champagne nor a wine yeast. You want to stick with the beer yeast. They will just end up producing enough alcohol that will give them a toxic environment. They just die off. And you can also back sweeten that with further apple juice to give some sweetness to it. It brings the alcohol down, but not too much. So yeah, I think a 5-gallon batch of hard cider, not hard cider, but mead is on the horizon, sorry. So yeah, and I've been watching videos on YouTube and reading about it. Everyone says either stick with beer yeast, and they've listed some dry yeasts and some liquid yeasts that will get you about 10% alcohol on your final product. So all the gear I have, all the tools I have will relate to that. I can use it to measure everything, so I don't have to buy anything extra or special, with the exception of bottles to put the final product in and cap. And they're not that expensive. I think you can get like a case of 4 for $12, $15, something like that. So, and I think they're like full-size wine bottles in size, so 750 milliliter bottles. So, yep, mead is something I am gonna dabble in here in a few months, about 5 or 6 months when it gets cold out. So, yeah, can't wait. All right, we are turning again. All right, there we are, and we're headed out towards the coast. 40 minutes on this leg, and then we hit tide and we turn to the north in anticipation for initial and final approach. So we're already 2 hours in. By the time we hit this, it'll be 2:40. So it looks like total flight time is going to be about 3 hours and 20 minutes today. Not too terrible. I was expecting to be in final approach right now. Flight planning showed 2 hours and 38 minutes, and the headwind has definitely slowed us down a bit. So not the end of the world. I will say back there, all the passengers, smoke them if you got them. I'll be back. we have the big lake coming up. You can see it off in the distance right here. That thing looks huge. In comparison, it's 200-mile range on this map, 200-mile radius, 100 miles to the front, 100 miles to the rear. So the entire screen, going top to bottom or side to side, will be 200 miles. And this lake looks like it runs almost the length of the screen. That is a very large inland body of water. I wonder if they have a Loch Ness Monster in that. I don't even know what lake that is, but it wouldn't be called Loch. We're not in Scotland, but lake this, or I'm not sure how you would say that in the local language. But I'd be willing to bet if you talk to people that live around it, you'll hear some stories very similar, more than likely, to people who live around Loch Ness or Lake Champlain, for example. They're supposed to have some type of prehistoric monster that you know, makes an appearance for cameras every 50 years or so. But yeah, I'm not discounting on I'm not discounting the fact that cryptids exist. You know, it's a big world, and humans, we're funny animals ourselves. We say, oh, this animal can't be alive, it died out a billion years ago, and every year scientists or explorers are going under the ocean, they're finding things that died off a million years ago. They found the coelacanth off the coast of Madagascar back in like 1975, and that fish was supposed to have died off like 50 million years in the past. So it's obvious that not everything that once had lived on this earth is completely dead. So it could very well be possible that a lot of these lakes just have underground cave systems, where if these animals need deep water, they can find it. They can find privacy, security. You know, they're so huge, nothing is going to mess with them besides humans. But they definitely know how to disappear when they have to. And I'm not saying that they do exist, but scientifically, I can't say that they don't. So, like I said, there's enough anecdotal evidence that animals that supposedly died hundreds of millions or millions of years ago or tens of thousands of years ago could potentially still be on the planet today. Just in secluded locations where they don't have any predators. And, you know, of course, humans would probably be the #1 threat to a lot of these very large animals if they were to still be alive. So, yeah, I've learned to never say no, to never say, oh, that can't be possible, because it seems like now we've hit a point in technology where things that weren't possible even 10 years ago, we see today. Like the James Webb Telescope is breaking records almost by the day. There's so many planets that have been found in the last just couple of years that could potentially support human life as we know it. And just 20 years ago, people said, well, you can't live anywhere but Earth because there's no water anywhere. Water is the rarest element ever. You know, it's even more rare than unicorn horn dust. And, you know, sure enough, water is everywhere. You know, there's Ganymede and Enceladus of Jupiter, and Io of Saturn are nothing but just pure balls of water. Solid rocky cores. So water not only is in a lot of places within our own solar system on some of the planets of the gas giants, but scientists have found with the James Webb Telescope there's almost like 500 planets that have been identified as being potential sources for life as we know it. So I think that's just really incredible. And you know, a lot of people say, well, I only believe it if it's scientifically proven. Well, just go to YouTube and watch James Webb, you know, telescope feeds, or watch videos where scientists are commenting on, yeah, we just found the 178th planet this year that looks like it has water and CO, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere based on the wavelengths of light coming off the planet. They can tell orbital speeds based by, you know, drops of intensity as planets transit in front of the sun. So based on those tidbits of information, they can also calculate probability of life being able to exist on those planets as well. So yeah, I'm not going to say that life is only on Earth. I think that's kind of short-sighted, it's kind of arrogant. I think there is a lot of life in a lot of places, and I think moving forward from this point in time, just imagine what we're going to have 5 years from now or 10 years from now. It's going to make the James Webb Telescope look like a Cracker Jack toy. And it wouldn't surprise me if within the next 20 years we start seeing things in the sky that are landing. So anyways, just my 2 cents. I could be just some crazy old guy rambling on, but hey, keep watching the sky, folks. You just never know. Water can make it 500 light years from here. Sure, life as we know it can. And we always say life as we know it. I've never heard a scientist say life as we don't know it, because there could be life in places that is based not on carbon. What if there's an ammonia-based life form living in a cloud of a gas giant someplace? What if there's a copper-based life form living under the ground somewhere? You know, you never know. You never know. So here's the beginning of this lake. Look at that. That's interesting. Looks like some of that lake dries up, maybe in the hot season. So it looks like the water, there's some water around the shore, and there's water here. But it looks like dry land, spots running through, so this is really pretty. Look at that color of blue. I wonder if there's a lot of minerals in the soil that are causing those colors. It's really pretty. Alright, we have roughly 30, oh god, I can't read that. 38 minutes remaining on this leg. So, what does that mean? What that means is, we got our map here. We've got 38 minutes to reach this point here at the coast. And at this point, I need to be on the lookout for instructions to land. So it looks like we're going to have a pretty landing coming out over the coast, not over the ocean, but back over that lake, running parallel to the river and tributary, and then we make our turn to the south for landing. So we'll put our ears on when we hit Delta Bravo Bravo Bravo. We'll start paying attention to the ground, and hopefully they'll have us descending before then. So it will be interesting for sure. was a scientist. His last name is Albuquerque. I believe he's a Spanish guy from Spain. And I don't know if he worked for NASA, if he worked in private industry, or if he worked in a university setting. And I believe it was the late 90s where he theorized faster than light travel. And it was termed warp travel based on Star Trek's method of locomotion. And ironically, it did something either identical or very similar to how in Star Trek Federation ships could go faster than light. So technically they can't. Albert Einstein that theory of relativity cannot be broken. In order to achieve an output of energy to reach the speed of light would cause your mass to be proportionally large. And as your mass becomes larger, your energy requires an infinite source to overcome the infinite mass, which is basically impossible. It's the old adage, if you put an irresistible force against another irresistible whatever, what's going to happen? Well, they cancel each other out. If they're exerting the same force in opposite directions upon each other, they can only cancel each other out. So if we have one force moving due north, one moving due south, each force exerting 1,000 pounds, nothing happens. They just sit there right in the middle. So, yeah, can't go faster than the speed of light, but you can break the rules, you can bend the rules, and this is what the Albuquerque drive does. What it does is it creates a field around the ship where it expands the space. I think it expands the space in front of the ship, and it causes that space to collapse to the rear of the ship. And what it does, when it does that, it moves space around the ship. The ship never moves. Space is moving around you. So if you remain stationary, space can move at practically any speed. So the only drawback would be to create the energy to power this device would require not an infinite amount of energy, just a source of it that could produce a very large quantity that could be used in the engines. However, we don't have that, not as a natural resource. However, we do have something as an unnatural resource, and that's antimatter. So, believe it or not, in Switzerland at CERN, Large Double Hadron Collider, whatever they got going on there now, they have, I believe, between 1 and 3 ounces held in magnetic suspension. It's the only way that we know that you can safely store an antimatter. Because once it contacts matter, they cancel each other out. And as they cancel each other out, they produce a near infinite amount of energy. So I think the idea goes something like, if we can control the amount of antimatter that is introduced to matter, the amount of energy will be smaller, even though it's still a very large amount, and can be controlled by the ship and used to bend space around the ship. So I don't know how much antimatter it would take to send a ship with a crew of people on it. However, I would imagine to send a small ship with an artificial intelligence on board to make all of the piloting decisions probably wouldn't be very much at all. And the closest planet that can support life as we know it, I believe, is only like 5 light years from here. So I don't think the AlbiQVer drive will be something I'll see in my lifetime. I think we're probably 50 to 100 years from it being a practical application. But I would say that maybe 50 years from now, we'll be able to send something out somewhere into space, and you never know what it might come in contact with. And even if there's nothing there, just to see another planet have that data transmitted back, it's not that long of a wait. You know, as radio waves travel at the speed of light, 5 years to receive that information. So it could be quite possible that it might only take 1 year for the ship to get there, and let's say it can exceed the speed of light by a factor of 1, it can travel at the speed of light. So if that system, I'm not sure if that's Sagittarius or what star that is, not too good with astronomy, but I think there's 3 planets that fall within the habitable zone, and there's one gas giant, there's one rocky world, and one similar in size and mass to Earth. And the interesting thing is, scientists are starting to believe that there are some gas giants where the James Webb Telescope has detected both carbon dioxide and oxygen in the atmospheres. They believe it could be possible that there are microscopic life forms or larger life forms in those atmospheres that just survive like jellyfish in the water, these big things that might be floating in the atmosphere. So yeah, keep your eyes and ears peeled for the information in the future. I think it's going to take us on a very interesting ride. And that is a very large lake. That thing is super gargantuous. Wow. Looks like we're 24 minutes from our next leg, our next waypoint here. And we should be making a landfall at the coast here in about 20 minutes. We are 2 hours and 19 minutes into today's flight. Roughly 55 minutes, I believe, remaining in the flight. Maybe a little bit less. So we'll see. Yeah, one thing I wish would get fixed in this game are the fuel calculations. Fuel usage or fuel burn, whatever you want to call it. The GPH or gallons per hour is 53. That's a little on the high side. It's actually about 20% on the high side. But at cruise for us in this aircraft, I believe our consumption should be around 45. So we're actually in the software utilizing more fuel to go the same distance. So it's easy to run out of gas. And there's been a few times where I made some flights where I didn't expect to run out, and I did. And sometimes I forget to fill it up while I'm going through the planning stage, and then I've got to fill it up right after I take off. And I always say, oh, forgot to top off the gas tank. So yeah, doesn't look like it's still consuming the fuel properly. But it does look like it's consuming less fuel, as I believe that fuel burn used to be like 55 to 57. So it's maybe more accurate, but I don't think is spot on accurate. But it's not a game breaker. It's just kind of lose a little reality. Because in real life, you wouldn't have to push a button on your computer and top your tanks off. They would already have the right amount of of fuel in them. Talking about fuel, California is doing some interesting and crazy things. They said by 2035, no more gas cars in California. Okay. I think that's a good goal to reach, but I don't think 2035 is a realistic goal. Maybe 2055. And this is something that politicians on both sides of the aisle need to come together on. You can't have, every time we have this letter of president, we do these things, and every time we have this letter of president, we do the exact opposite. We're flip-flopping between both extremes. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes that. There's probably 2% on each extreme that love the extremes, and I get that. We all have microcosms we would love to live in, and ironically, they're all very similar. You know, if you were to ask 1 million people of a lot of different political ideologies, whatever you want to call them, persuasions, beliefs, at the core of every human, we're all very, very similar. We all have similar wants, needs, desires. We're all driven by Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We first need security, we need shelter, we need to stay warm, we need clothes, we need food. And once we have those very basic needs met, then we can meet some higher order needs, like let's get a house, let's get a job, you know, let's get the things we need to where we can support ourselves, to where we can be productive people, to where we contribute to society. And then you go up the next level to where you say, hey, I want to strive to be the president of a company or a leader of this, or I want to be a lawyer, a doctor, and then there's education. And then you reach the very top and you say, I am the best version of me that I can be. I'm the best human that I can be. And that's kind of how the hierarchy of needs work. Unfortunately, in politics, politicians only care about politicking, which is just bad business for everyone. Because you hear this one politician say, this person did that, and then a different politician says it wasn't that person, it was this. That's all nonsense. It's all an illusion. It's just garbage put in front of our face to distract us from the truth. And the truth is, they're all a bunch of greedy little monsters with their hands in a candy jar, taking out the cookies. You know, they're the only ones that win. Play stupid games. We're the ones that win the stupid prizes, not them. They're the ones funneling millions of dollars into their own pockets. Now, this isn't just a D thing or an R thing. As long as you're humans, it's going to be an everybody thing. So I'm not just cranking on one side, one political side. I'm cranking on all humans in politics. Get your shit together. Get it straight. You are not in this for you. You are in this for us. And that's the problem. They don't look at us. They think they do. We need socialism. We need thisism. We need thatism. No, we don't. We need safety and security, number one. It's something we do not have right now. And if you say we don't have it, of course we have it. Well, how many millions of people have come in the southern border? You know, you don't control that. You're not a sovereign nation. You know, and it's sick that there's politicians that are allowing this to happen because it gives them some pull over the other party. Once again, we lose. I'll get off my horse, but the message I'm trying to get across, that shit's got to stop. It's not right. So, getting back to California, going gas free. That is a beautiful goal to shoot for, but 2035, I don't think is realistic at all. And it's kind of interesting because, you know, okay, we make gas illegal. You know, hybrids are a step in the right direction, but they still need gas. Full electric vehicles, they start at $45,000. Teslas are quite expensive. You know, if you're a single mom with 3 kids in California struggling to make ends meet, living in a cardboard box under a bridge, can that lady afford an electric vehicle? No. Very few people can, in fact. So on top of that, California has said, hey, we want people to not only buy electric vehicles, we want you to not use them because we can't make enough electricity. Can you believe that? Cannot make enough electricity. They used to be able to make enough electricity. They can't anymore. How do we even begin to wrap our heads around that? Please buy an electric vehicle, but please don't use it. The level of whatever in that is truly astounding. Buy an electric vehicle, save the environment, but don't use it. I don't know, I'm not the smartest person in the bunch, but to me that makes no sense. So I think as a country, all of our politicians need to get together and say, look, we all want to move in the right direction. We want to make this the best planet possible. But it has to be done in a way where it's not putting millions into pockets of politicians so they can continue to be politicians. And it doesn't matter, like I said, whatever letter is at the end of their name. It doesn't matter. You know, it's a bunch of clowns at a clown party when you break it down to its simplest essence. So I think that's astoundingly short-sighted to get rid of your power generation sources, push people, not ask them, push them, force them into a model they can't afford, and then say, once you bought that model that you cannot afford, we're going to ask you to not buy the electricity you need to continue using that model. I don't know how that even passed the sniff test. To me, it just smells rotten. Anyways, if you haven't read the story yet, it's out there. Go check it out. Anyways, I think if we want to move forward as a species, as a race of humans, not just us in the US, but globally, every person in the world needs to get their act together. We all want to make this planet a better place, but it's not just fossil fuels that will take us in the wrong direction if we continue to use them. There's a lot of decisions behind a lot of things that are used in this world, like plastics. People think plastics are great. We can recycle plastics. We can recycle some plastics. There's 7 different types of plastics that are made for commercial use anyways, and only 2 are fully recyclable. You believe that? 7 types of plastics, and we all pretend like we're recycling them, but only 2 of that 7 can be recycled. Of the remaining 5, only 2 more are partially recyclable, but the cost to recycle them is prohibitive to doing so. So of all the plastic that we use, you know, almost 60% gets thrown in landfill. And we're lied to, and we're saying, if you buy this, you're doing the right thing by the planet. No, we're doing the right thing by someone's wallet. And that's just an example of what has to stop. Used to be we used glass. Glass was non-polluting. Now granted, the factories that would, you know, blow glass could release a little bit of hot air into the atmosphere, but nothing you couldn't, you know, clean up. Glass is recyclable. You can clean it, reuse it. As long as it's not broken or chipped, you can continue to do so for a very long time. And it was I think it started in the late 40s, early 50s, plastic, and most Americans didn't care about plastics, wanted glass, and once the lie was told about how bad glass was for the environment, how healthy plastic would be, Americans started to get on board with that. Unfortunately, they got on board with the lie. A lot of people don't know that. There's a lot of things people don't know. Take things on faith. But you got to remember, the people we're supposed to have faith in, I don't think we can. You know, and I don't mean to say that the people in politics that you like are bad. I'm saying they're all bad. I'm saying they all are not doing the right thing. Some try, they get beat down by their party. Both parties are the same in the fact that if you say, hey, I don't believe in this dogma, I think we should be doing something different. Well, guess what? You're not getting reelected. You're on the outside. You're a fringe. You believe in these crazy things. All these stories pop up in the media about how you did this, said that, which are completely untrue. Yeah. And people don't vote for you, even when you're doing the right thing. That has to stop. So I'm going to get off the soapbox. I'm going to jump off that horse. But check out the stories. If you don't believe me, they're 100% true. Anyways, we have roughly 14 minutes in this leg. And if we look down here on the flight computer, it's calling for 15,650 feet. So I am going to dial in 15,700 feet as our descent target. And we should be getting that when we reach TYE, Tango, Yankee, Echo, up here. I'm going to get a refill on the coffee, and I will be back in just a few minutes. how money usually takes over industry and pushes it in directions that are not good for the environment for some things, and are good for money, make people rich, but they don't do the right thing for everyone else. And what was I going to say? I was going to go somewhere with that. And, it'll pop back in my head here, hopefully in a few minutes. Oh yeah, battery technology. So current car batteries are lithium ion, and it's so great, right? Because you're saving the environment, so we think. Lithium is actually a highly toxic substance. It only comes from a few places in the world. It's usually countries that are very impoverished, Africa for example, lithium rich, and can't dispose of it. When your lithium ion battery dies, you just don't throw it in the trash. One, it is very, very expensive and very difficult to extract lithium out of a battery into a form that can be used for something else. Generally, it's not done because the cost to do so is very prohibitive. So most lithium batteries are just stored in warehouses. Most dead lithium ion batteries are stored in warehouses. Let me say it again. Most expired lithium batteries are stored in warehouses. If you have a lithium battery that dies, you just don't throw it away. You're actually going to create a pretty huge environmental disaster by doing that. There are other forms of batteries based on graphene and boraphene, which are basically atomic layers of graphite stacked on top of one another in a lattice that will hold an electric charge. On top of that, graphene is relatively neutral. It's carbon-based. You don't want graphite getting into the air. You don't want to breathe it in. You don't want to dump it in the pond. However, the impact on the environment to use it, to extract it, to put it in a form where you make a battery is very minor compared to the environmental impacts of lithium. And I hope the industry doesn't kill the production of graphene and boraphene batteries, because they look like, one, they're cheaper to produce, and two, they can get you a lot farther on a single charge, and three, are thousands of times safer for the environment to not only mine, to produce, and to recycle. So yeah, keep your eyes out on graphene and boraphene. Those technologies should be driving battery technology in the next couple of years, and if they're not, someone's bought them out. It's continuing to do the wrong thing by the environment. So yeah. Anyways, we've got 6 minutes and 56 seconds to our next nav point, and we should be starting our descent on initial approach pretty soon. I'm going to go ahead and start slowing us down. I'm going to retard the throttle here a little bit. And yes, that is the correct word to use. You can either say we advance the throttle to give more gas, or we retard the throttle to apply less. There's nothing wrong with saying that. I'm not poking fun at nobody. I'm just using the correct terminology. So please don't tell me that I'm mean for saying that, because I'm not. It's in the field of aviation, it's the correct terminology to use. So, and just because you don't agree with something doesn't mean that it's a very horrible, horrific, awful thing that people shouldn't say or do. And what right does anyone have to tell anyone else what they should say or do? We can always disagree with what people say and not like what people say, but we should never try to tell them they can't say something, because they have the right to say it. They have a right to their opinions. We can always ask them to say, hey, would you mind not saying that around me? That's an okay thing to say. But it's not okay to say, no, you cannot have that opinion. And that's actually a dangerous mindset to have, believe it or not. Falls in the purview of communism. So, yeah. Alright. Have pulled the throttles back and we're slowly decreasing our airspeed. Try to get us down to about 300 knots.
Delta 019er descend and maintain 17,000 feet.
Descend and maintain 17,000 feet, Daher 019er.
All right, down we go. A little bit early. Had a plan. I like it. We are on a 3,000 foot per minute descent, glide path, as you will, is what it's called. And I think they said the altitude was 17,000, so we'll dial that in. Four minutes to tie, and then we make our turn to the northeast. Definitely a hazy day out there for sure, but not as bad as I was expecting. So I was expecting just a hellacious cloud cover. And once we're under 18,000 feet, we'll go ahead and reset our barometric air pressure to actual. The reason why above 18,000 feet, the barometer is set to sea level, so all traffic at that altitude or above that altitude are all on the same pressure setting, so they can all be at the same altitude. If you had 100 different airplanes coming from 100 different directions with different barometric pressure settings, nobody would be at the same altitude. And air traffic can stack aircraft either side by side or on top of one another. And I think if it's side by side, there has to be like 1,000 feet of space. And if it's on top of one another, I think it's 2,000 or 3,000 feet of separation they have to have. So at above 18,000 feet, if every one of those 100 aircraft were at slightly different barometric pressures, they would all be off from one another. And ground control would be telling people turn this way and that way, and there could be mid-air collisions, which would not be a good thing. So, yep. But under 18,000, everyone goes back to actual. And the idea behind that is, well, under 18,000 feet, there's not going to be that much air traffic in any one space, so ground can just tell everyone, hey, once you enter this space, here's your barometer setting. Put it there, keep it there. Bada boom, bada bing, problem solved. So, yeah. Sorry, I just had to work a bada boom, bada bing in there. Bada boom, bada bing. Alright, start to advance the throttles a little bit. Coming up on flight level 170, 17,000 feet. And we have reset our barometer. Went from 29 point, I think it was 29.22 or 29.99 to 0.88. Wasn't a big change, it was pretty small. I think it's 29.92 is sea level, so 0.06 was the difference. Pretty small. I think it only equated out to like 40 feet. In anticipation for our next waypoint, I'm going to see if they'll allow us to send down 10,000. I'm going to request a 7,000. Oh, can't. Okay. We're in the hands of ground control. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this marks the beginning of our initial approach. If you could, please pick up all your beer cans and whiskey bottles, and just don't want to have a tripping hazard for the people who can barely stand and walk right now. So, no, just kidding. Yeah, if you could just put your trash away. Should be on the ground here in about another 25 minutes or so. I'm going to keep as close to 170 knots in the airspeed. This is the 170 is the max altitude for safe flap deployment to our first notch. So I like to stay close to 170. And I'm talking airspeed, which is right here, not ground speed or actual airspeed. Only care about our speed as measured in the air for flaps. So it looks like we'll have, it's not a direct tailwind, it's kind of a crosswind coming from our back left to the front right. Not too terrible, but hopefully it'll die down on ground just to a few knots. 10 knots right now. It's kind of vacillating between 9 and 10, but I think that should be just a few on the ground, so that shouldn't make landing too difficult. Like I said earlier, this airport did not have instrument landing systems, support or service for the opposite end of the runway. So we're coming in on 180. Nothing existed for 360, so yep, kind of stuck with it. There were a few other airports around that actually had headwinds to land into. However, it would have made the flight an hour shorter or an hour longer, and I didn't want either. So I just said, okay, I'll kind of stick with this and see where it goes. So.
Descend and maintain 7,000 feet, Daher 019er.
7,000. Wide slope set, throttle set. Landing lights on. Crossing through flight level 130 on to 7,000 feet. 6,000 feet remaining in descent.
Contact Cono Center on 121.7. Good day.
Good day to you.
121.7 for Daher 019er. Cono Center Daher Foxtrot Mike 1019er is at 12,300 feet, descending 7,000 feet.
Daher Foxtrot Mike 1019er Cono Center altimeter 29.88 continue to MM 504 as planned.
Altimeter set to 9.88 inches of mercury. So we're landing over there somewhere. Over there somewhere. I've never flown, even in the sim.
Daher 019er, you are 3 miles west. Descend and maintain 1,700 feet. Expect ILS runway 18 right approach via Lima Alpha Golf transition. Clear to Lima Alpha Golf.
All right.
Descend and maintain 1,700 feet. Expect ILS runway 18 right approach via Lima Alpha Golf transition. Cleared to Lima Alpha Golf Daher 019er.
We're clear to land, folks. So we are still on initial, and up ahead here in a few miles, once we make our final right turn, we'll be on final. So still have a few miles before I lower flaps and landing gear. I'd like to make that final right turn before doing both. so there's no need to slow down until we make that final right-hand turn. If everyone could, please ensure you're buckled up. Trash is stowed, and we should be on the ground here in about 10 minutes. Flight attendants, prepare for cross-check. No, just kidding. We don't have any flight attendants. It's just you guys in the back with all your beer cans. Pick them up. We're to cross through flight level 5,000 on our way to 1,007. We're almost there. We have roughly 2 minutes. It's pretty green down there. Pretty green. Approaching flight level 1,700. Flaps deployed, first notch.
Contact Lagos approach on 124.7. Good day.
Roughly 25 miles to our turn final.
124.7 for Dahar 019er. Lagos approach Dahar Foxtrot Mike 1019er 1,700 feet.
Dahar Foxtrot Mike 1019er Lagos approach altimeter 29.88. Continue to Lima Alpha Golf as planned.
It's a pretty body of water over here. It's really light blue in color. Wouldn't mind looking at that every day. Well, at least the tailwind is going to be a headwind, so we're landing into a headwind like we're supposed to. So when I planned the flight, it was actually showing a 6 nautical mile an hour crosswind from, I believe it was northeast to southwest, and kind of be blowing across the tail. And looks like we're actually landing into the wind, so that is a good thing. Good thing. Roughly 20 minutes, 20 miles to our right-hand turn. 6 minutes on the counter. So yeah, it looks like fuel consumption's better, but I don't think it's accurate. Right now it's showing 44 GPH, but the throttle's pulled almost all the way back. Should have had a little, about half of our tanks available at landing. We're a little bit under that. Not super bad. Not 100% accurate, but I think it is better than what it used to be 6 months ago. So, yay, step in the right direction. Keep going, Microsoft. You are doing a great job, and you guys are. I'm not saying that in jest. I thoroughly enjoy flying on the sim here, and I hope it's available for me to do so for many decades to come. Keep up the good work, folks. We have 11 nautical miles before we make our big right-hand turn onto final. Feet are back on the flaps. And once we complete that right-hand turn, we'll switch over to our localizer, and that'll bring us in on our approach. Should bring us to a couple hundred feet above the runway, and we'll take over and put it down manually from there. Hope everyone's been happy flying our crazy airline today, and hope to come back for more. It might be a couple weeks before I make another one of these videos, but here in October, I'm gonna start going back full time. So might make one next weekend also. We'll see what happens time wise on my end. Hopefully I'll have a couple hours to do one. So I thoroughly enjoy doing these, and we're doing my flight around the world, where I left North Carolina, flew to Massachusetts, then British Columbia, then what was it, Greenland, or Iceland, and Greenland, and then from there over to like England, or Ireland, then England, then France, then back to England, back to France. Yeah. Then over to Italy, and then from Italy we flew to North Africa, and came into North Africa kind of on the central northern part, and we skimmed over the northern parts, went to the Canary Islands, and left the Canary Islands, and came back to coast of Africa, northwest. I've been skirting around either the coast or a couple hundred miles inland, so yeah, had a blast. Roughly 30 seconds, and we make our turn on final. Here we go. gear flaps.
Lagos Tower Dahar Foxtrot, Mike 1019er 7 miles, north inbound ILS runway, 18 right approach.
Dahar Foxtrot, Mike 1019er Lagos Tower. Altimeter 29er.88, wind 229er at 13. Cleared ILS runway, 18 right approach.
Although we're not landing on a carrier,
18 right approach, Dahar 019er.
We would say we have the ball. They would say call the ball. We would say we have the ball.
Dahar 019er, wind 229er at 13. Clear to land runway 18 right.
Clear to land runway 18 right, Dahar 019er.
Yeah, something seems a little off. Oh, yeah. Yeah, something seems a little bit off with this, so manual control it's going to be. I think we can still save this. Yeah, I was trying to put us on the other runway, and yeah, some airport data is not accurate, it's not correct. And this is one of those situations where it's trying to put us on some runway that it shouldn't have been, whether the runway actually exists at the airport or not. It should have been putting us in line with this landing right here. So let's see if I can save it. I would very much like to, because I only have a few more minutes before I gotta get to do something. Alright, and we're down. Not so bad. Not center line, but I was not aiming for the center today. I was aiming.
Dahar 019er, turn next taxiway.
I was aiming for right of center. Alright, we should be off the runway here in just a few minutes.
Dahar 019er, contact ground on 0.9er.
Yeah, nose wheel steering is not
121.9er, Daher 019er.
accurate. Should when I push the pedal on the ground all the way down one direction, it should swing us about really sharply, and it's not doing that. So I think next flight I'll have to recalibrate my pedals. And there's vehicles on the taxiway up there, which there shouldn't be. So I'm gonna pretend like they're not there. No. Hey, Mr. Truck, we don't see you. Do. And yeah, not there. Same thing with this fool up here driving around. Yeah, they all shouldn't be there either. But neither should these lights on this taxiway here. Not the ones on the ground laying flat, but the ones that are sticking up. That's not quite right. But you know, at the end of the day, it's not really a showstopper. It's just a thing that is not quite right yet. Flaps up. If they want us to weave around them. We don't have a horn, so can't beep at them. And it seems like our taxiway, our parking spot is kind of further away than I thought, but I think we're approaching it here. Looks like we're about a half mile away from it. Yeah, you see that light right there on the post? Right here? Yeah, that shouldn't be there. So in a perfect world, that truck right there that was in front of us, he would have had a sign with lights on it that would have said, "Follow me," and he would have kind of brought us over here to our parking spot. All right, we're down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the brake. We're going to get a whole bunch of safety warnings as I turn all these things off. But I'm not going to bore you with the full-on shutdown. I will end the video here. Thanks for flying with us today, and I hope to see you soon.